Propaganda. It's one of those words, right? We all feel like we know what it means. It conjures up these heavy historical images, like something from an old black and white movie. But what if I told you that its real meaning is actually way simpler, and that its modern form is something you bump into, well, every single day? Let's dive in and really unpack this. No, seriously, just take a second here. When I say propaganda, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? I bet for a lot of you, it's probably something along these lines, right? Yeah, for most of us, it's exactly that, isn't it? Those gritty posters, angry wartime slogans, all that stuff. We tend to think of it as a tool of the past, kind of this blunt, obvious instrument that would never work on savvy people like us today. But here's the thing, propaganda didn't just go away. It just got a whole lot better at hiding.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start by really looking at what the word even means. Then we'll get into its super surprising religious origins. From there, we'll see how it got such a bad rap and how it pulled off this incredible rebranding as public relations. Then the really fun part, we'll find it hidden in your daily life. And finally, we'll talk about how you can spot the modern gardeners who are planting these ideas all around us.
Okay, so first things first. If we really want to get a handle on how propaganda works today, we've got to do something crucial. We need to strip away all the negative stuff we associate with it, all that baggage, and go right back to the very beginning, to the word itself. And this is what's absolutely fascinating. The word's original meaning is from the Latin propagare. And get this, it's basically a farming term. Yeah, it just means to propagate, or to spread. Like a gardener who plants seeds and wants to help them grow. Seriously, that's it. That's all propaganda meant at first. Just the simple act of helping an idea take root and spread. And this is where we hit our first big surprise. Because when you think about where this term came from, you're probably thinking politics or war, right? Nope. The term wasn't born on a battlefield or in a government building. Its origins are actually religious. I mean, just look at this timeline. The term was officially coined way back in 1622 by the Catholic Church. That is nearly 300 years before it got tangled up with wartime messages. The group was called the Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, which basically just means the Congregation for Propagating the Faith. And their job was, well, exactly what it sounds like. They were meant to be the gardeners of their faith. Their whole goal was to spread Catholicism across the globe, to plant the seeds of their belief system and help it grow. And back then, propaganda was not a bad word at all. It was just a neutral, descriptive term for the process of spreading a worldview. Okay, so if the word started out so neutral, so, harmless, what happened? How did it become the dirty word we all think of today? Well, the answer to that lies on the battlefield. The World Wars. That was the big turning point. Now, the core idea was still the same, to grow a belief in people's minds. But this time, the seed they were planting wasn't a religious faith. It was the idea of an evil enemy. Governments figured out they could use these techniques to whip up public emotion and get everyone behind the war effort. And you know what? It worked. It worked a little too well. Because after the wars were over, people started looking back and got really, really suspicious of being manipulated like that. The word propaganda itself became toxic. Nobody wanted to be associated with it. So the whole industry of influence had a problem. It had to change its name. It had to go underground. And this is where a key figure enters the picture, a guy named Edward Bernays. He's often called the father of public relations. And he was smart. He saw that the word propaganda was just toast. It was beyond saving. So he gave the whole concept a rebrand, a total makeover. And you can see the shift so clearly here. The old propaganda was obvious, it was run by the government, and everyone connected it with war. The new public relations, on the other hand, it was subtle, designed for peacetime, and its new home was the corporate world. It was literally the same playbook, just with a much nicer, more professional-sounding name. Now, this is the really important part. This was not some accident. Bernays himself was totally open about it. He basically said, yeah, I'm just taking the techniques of propaganda and applying them to the corporate world. He adapted the tools of the battlefield for the boardroom. Psychological warfare just became marketing. So once propaganda put on its new public relations suit, it kind of faded into the background. It wasn't about wartime posters anymore. It was about, well, your breakfast table. So many of the facts that you and I just take for granted were actually ideas that were carefully planted and grown, usually to make someone a lot of money. Okay, let's play a game. Let's start with an absolute classic. We've all heard this a million times, right? Eat your carrots, they help you see in the dark. But have you ever stopped to think, where did that idea actually come from? Well, believe it or not, it was an incredibly clever piece of World War II propaganda. See, the British had just invented radar, which was a total game changer for their pilots in night battles. To keep this amazing new tech a secret from the enemy, they started spreading a rumor, a story that their pilots were so good because they ate a ton of carrots. A little myth planted to hide a massive military secret. All right, how about another one? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I mean, that one feels like solid gold, right? It sounds like something your doctor would tell you. But is it really based in medicine?
The answer is not really. That idea was pushed and pushed hard in the 1940s by, you guessed it, cereal companies. People like Kellogg's had a really simple goal: sell more breakfast cereal. So they planted that little seed of an idea, watered it with marketing and media campaigns, and watched it grow into something we now treat as fundamental health advice.
Okay, last one. The classic 8 glasses of water a day. It's like the holy grail of hydration, the number one rule we're all told to follow. But again, is that the whole story? This one is just a masterclass in subtle messaging. So the original science said we need about that much fluid from all sources combined. That means from water, sure, but also from the food we eat. What did the bottled water industry do? They just started propagating the advice, but they conveniently left out the from food part. That one tiny omission created a gigantic market by making us all think we have to chug it all from a bottle. So as you can see, this basic technique, planting an idea and nurturing it until people just accept it as reality, is incredibly powerful. And it's really, really important to get this next part. This isn't a tool used by just one side or one type of group. These gardening tools are used by pretty much everyone. Yeah, governments and big corporations are the obvious ones, but they're also used by mainstream media, by so-called alternative media, and even by famous conspiracy theorists like David Icke. The tactics might change, but the goal is always the same: plant a seed, help it grow, and cultivate a specific worldview in the minds of the public. So you see, propaganda isn't some dusty thing from a history book. It is the invisible architecture shaping our world every single day. From the health facts we follow to the products we buy, we are all walking through a garden where ideas have been planted for us. So the real question is, now that you know the technique, can you start to see the gardener behind the plants?